welcome Charlotte County to our second part of a two-part series of our video archive tour. Today we are at the Englewood Charlotte Library inside the very bowels, if you will, of the Englewood archives. And if you have not yet seen our first part, where we show the Punta Gorda archives over at the Punta Gorda Charlotte Library, please do check that out. There is no particular order that you need to watch these videos, but we would highly recommend that everyone check both of them out. So once again, my name is Jennifer Zoebelein, and I'm the historian for Charlotte County, and I am joined by our archivist, Sam Alexander, and we are going to once again talk about the importance of archives and these archives in particular. So Sam, today we are inside the very bowels of the Englewood archives here. And I know yesterday, or in our previous video, we talked about what an archive is. And today I'd like to expand on that. Can you tell the viewers a little bit about the various rooms and why it is that this room in particular is considered the storage room?
Well, Jennifer, with the Charlotte County Archives, there are 3 rooms at both of the Englewood and Punta Gorda location. The outer room is the intake room, which is for intaking donations and supplies. The second is the processing room. That's where the work on describing and arranging collections take place. Lastly, this is the storage room where once collections have been fully arranged, described, and properly processed, they're placed here, and they're placed in storage rooms specifically as they allow for the large spaces our collections need and are also set at the specific temperatures collections need, as it is a professional standard of having a temperature of, at the highest, 68 degrees Fahrenheit and aiming for a humidity between 35 and 45. However, it should be noted that different materials have different levels that you want for them. The ones I mentioned just happen to be for most paper documents.
Which is a lot of what we see here, and I'm sure the viewers can see the bound volumes of the Punta Gorda Herald over your right shoulder. But then there's other materials in here as well. And would you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm sure the viewers are curious as to the different types of boxes that they're seeing, and maybe why the bound volumes are not in boxes, these materials are in boxes. Could you talk about that a little bit?
The bound the bound volumes are not boxed, as they are quite large and they need their space. Additionally, great care is needed when placing books in boxes in order to not damage the spine, and sometimes it's just better to just leave an oversized bound volume out instead of trying to force it into a box where, depending on how you place it, you're risking the spine being damaged or pages being damaged when you try and remove the book out of the box due to it being a tight fit. In regards to some of the other materials we have here, in the back we have many paintings from a local painter, Betty Reese. These are great materials as they show a historical image of many of the iconic sites around Charlotte County. Additionally, we have plat maps which help show the developmental history of Charlotte County and shows how different areas were divided up. Those are also oversized bound volumes that have to be laid out, although they are far wider than the Punta Gorda Herald volumes seen here. We also have aerial photographs and many documents, such as one from an engineer who had worked on the development of Rotunda.
So Sam, I'm sure that folks watching are noticing a little bit of a difference between in the type of storage that we see here at the Englewood Archive versus what they saw at the Punta Gorda Archive in terms of shelving, in terms of cabinets, and things that we don't have at the Punta Gorda Library. Is this why is this? And I know you talked a little bit about the different kinds of storage that is needed for different materials, but is it a benefit to have a larger archive like this as well as a smaller one, right? And I know Charlotte County is unique in that we have two different archives, but so is this helpful for us? Is this, talk a little bit about that.
Well, the way I see it, it's kind of like the state of Wisconsin, where it's split over two parts at a lake, but it's still one state. So that means they have more area to work with. The same applies here. The shelves at Englewood here are wider and so allow for more oversized volumes, such as the plaque maps, which would not be guaranteed to fit on the shelves over at Punta Gorda. Additionally, with the file drawers, those are only here at Englewood, and they're pretty good for storing newspapers, magazines, and maps while still keeping them flat, which wouldn't be possible at Punta Gorda. However, Punta Gorda does provide a lot of space that non-oversized materials could be stored at, such as boxes of manuscripts and records, and perhaps even bound volumes, such as the Punta Gorda Herald, although again, it would depend on the exact measurements available, but overall, having two spaces overall just means more space overall.
And I think, you know, for those folks watching that don't know, the Punta Gorda Charlotte Library, where we were yesterday, is a brand new building. That library is only about a year old. And so for Sam, as an incoming archivist, right, he was able to start from scratch in that space because it was a completely empty space. And that allows him a very nice workspace, as we saw yesterday, whereas the space here has already been taken up, right? There we have a lot. This was the only archive for a very long time, and so it, you know, just the setup is different, the workspace is different, and so just, you know, for Sam, you have two different workspaces, but there's certainly benefits to both, and certainly, as he said, there's benefits to the resources that are in both. Now, yesterday, Sam, we were standing inside the reading room at Punta Gorda Library, which is a new feature. That was something that was purposely put in when the new Punta Gorda Library was built. Englewood Library does not have that reading room. Does that impact potential researchers' ability to come here and examine these artifacts, or is it a possible situation down the road where library space, where a space in the actual physical library could be used as a research room instead?
I'm inclined to say the latter, as our libraries do have meeting rooms of small size that could be used. That's why it's important for researchers to make sure to plan ahead to communicate with history services if they're interested in conducting research. That way we can plan to use one of those rooms for the purpose of that examination, as otherwise there's not really a reading room that could be used at Englewood.
And so I think this is good for people to know, and it's good that everyone understands the process that is in place now in terms of setting up an appointment to come and do research. And even prior to setting that appointment, contacting history services, Sam or I, and discussing what it is that you would like to look at, discussing why it is that you would like to look at that material, where it's located, and then how we can go about allowing access in a safe way that is both protective of the visitor, but also protective of the artifacts, which of course, Sam, is your primary responsibility here, the preservation and the protection of these artifacts in your care. Is there anything else you would like the viewers to know about Englewood Archives, Punta Gorda Archives, archives in general, before we close out for today?
Well, I wouldn't say protection is the sole cause. It's also a matter of access, because if you aren't able to provide access to materials at all, then why have them? It's a matter of balancing the two, and I hope to always provide fast and dynamic service that helps our community and interested researchers access the materials while still preserving them for future use.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you for clarifying that. I think certainly, right, again, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you watching, historians, archivists, just like libraries and archives, there is some overlap, but we have different responsibilities, and so it's great to have Sam clarify these points and really get everyone to understand what archives are for, what archivists do, and allow this material to be accessible while also preserving it as well. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed our video tours of the archives, and we hope to see you at another one of our virtual programs in the future.